maybe I'm doing something wrong, but the atheists just don't want to debate me. I don't know if it's just a thing where they prefer to be in the comments rather than have a discussion with someone, but I have literally repeatedly invited them on stream, and I have gotten engagement with a couple of different people who say like, no, I just want to message you privately. And I think we're missing what the field of debate is about. It's about having a conversation. To be clear, I don't want to debate, actually. I want to have a casual and friendly conversation. I want to explore beliefs and test my points against your points and talk to you about topics thoroughly and fully. And I don't have anything to win. I'm not seeking to win against you. I already know what I believe and what I think, and I change my mind frequently on the details, and I would be happy to talk to someone about them. This is all coming off of the context of the video that I posted against Jordan Peterson's appearance on Surrounded, where I had to engage with a lot of people in the comments who had a lot to say about that video and a lot to say about my thoughts in it. And I got so many comments that I actually ended up having to post this pinned comment, which nobody responded to. I only posted this a few months in or a few minutes in, because it started getting so much engagement that I posted a comment where I said, thank you for engaging, even though many of you disagree with me. If you're willing to have a discussion with me that would get posted to the YouTube channel, feel free to reach out in the forum. I promise you a fair and civilized conversation that will not be edited before release, aside from audio, video, or technological mistakes or failures. And I posted the link to my forum there that I keep trying to get people to engage with. But it shocks me, I guess, that people are not interested in engaging. To me, the reason why being involved on YouTube matters is to be able to test ideas, to learn things, and to interact with other people. And so I originally came on board to YouTube with the intent of interacting with people and discussing these things, which I think are important. I want to share with you what I'm going through, my journey, what I'm learning, how I'm growing, and the things that I'm dealing with in my spiritual journey and how I feel about them. And I'm so interested in engaging with people, and it just shocks me that people are not interested in engaging with videos like this. Whereas I got double digits of comments and responses, and I tried to respond to as many as I could, but there's just only so far that you can go down into a YouTube comment rabbit hole, where I believe that if I'm debating you in a YouTube comment rabbit hole, people are not going to follow it down and learn from this. People are going to learn if we have a professional exchange with one another where we actually talk about these things, and then they can hear the ideas being battled out for themselves. I think that's what people want. I think they want to have their ideas tested in that way. They don't want to see a bunch of people commenting and just saying whatever nonsense comes to their minds in the YouTube comments that they can't defend in a full throttle conversation. If you think your ideas are good, come and talk to me about them, while I'll talk to you about my ideas in a completely civilized way. It's just very frustrating to me. So I'm going to go ahead and respond very casually to a couple of these comments. I already responded to them. You can go read all the comments. There's so many comments in this video, but I wanted to talk about just a couple of them. The biggest thing that I got flack for was not understanding the difference between an atheist and an agnostic. And so I want to apologize, because I didn't realize that this was so important to the atheist community. I got just comments on comments and comments to my point about these people not being atheists, because I felt that in the debate, they weren't debating about atheism, but so many of the people were debating about agnosticism. And so the way I'm differentiating these things, and I've come to decide that I'm wrong. Like, okay, I was wrong about how I went at it. And so I want to apologize. I want to genuinely apologize. I was wrong about the difference between an atheist and an agnostic, and about what they actually think. At the same time, I'm not convinced that being wrong matters as much as people seem to have made it to matter, because the point of what I'm making is this. I'm trying to differentiate between these two states of mind, which is site A is simply like, I'm going about my life, and in my life, I don't have enough evidence to make me investigate or interested in the concept of God. To me, that has always been the agnostic mindset, and that's how I was saying it, but I'm apparently wrong about that. Apparently, it's more detailed. It's more detailed of saying, like, you can't come to a conclusion about God, which to me sounds sort of similar. But what I'm calling agnostic, and what I'm interested in differentiating between, is those people who are not against God, who have not evaluated the evidence necessarily, or maybe they've like engaged with it a tiny little bit, and they're just like, there's just no reason for me to look into this God thing. It's unimportant to me, and I don't feel the need that when a Christian comes up to me, I just don't feel like I need to look into it. That's what I'm portraying as agnostic. Whatever you want to call it, that's the first category I'm talking about. Maybe you could call it theological indifference or something like that. And then for atheist, in the second category, what I'm talking about is people who have examined evidence, have examined the basic claims about God, about Christianity, or whatever religion it might be, and have decided that the evidence is not good enough to suggest to them that there is a God. So this is different than indifference. You're not indifferent about whether or not there could be a God, but you're also not saying like, I just don't think there's enough evidence to support there being a God. You're saying, I believe the evidence that exists, or the evidence that does not exist, is sufficient to suggest to me that there is not a God. So like, I believe that there is not a God would be the claim to me. And those are the two positions I'm trying to differentiate with. It's like, I don't think it matters. I don't want to look into it. There's no reason for me to look into it. I have no reason to believe in God. Or I believe there is no God. Because to me, the only other alternative to those two positions is the third position, which is I believe there is a God. And so many people were trying to argue against me for a sort of like middle position, something like I don't think there's a God and I don't think there's enough evidence to suggest there's a God, but I also do not say that there's enough evidence for me to deny the existence of God. It like something really complicated in the middle, and it just doesn't make sense to me personally. I'm trying to make it make sense, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about it, not in the flapping YouTube comments. I would be really happy if you write a comment below, and I'd be happy to respond to it. But if you want to have a long conversation about what it means and why you think that, then actually have a long conversation with me. Go into my YouTube description and find the forum, please, and engage with me. I'd be so happy to do so. My point, again and continually, is that I'm looking more so to engage with agnostics than atheists, because I think the atheist position to me is unattainable. Saying that there is not enough evidence for the existence of God, or there is enough non-evidence for you to decide that there's probably not a God, is a decision that's made. And I want to interact with you in a different way than I want to interact with people who are agnostic. Whereas like I feel like the content on my channel is more geared towards agnostics. It's like, here, if you don't know, here's some stuff about the Bible. I mean, my content is geared towards believers, but if an agnostic was to stumble upon my content, I think they would find it interesting. Whereas when atheists stumble upon, they find it angering, which is different. If you're angered by my content, then you might be what I'm categorizing as an atheist, which is like, I don't want to believe in God and I don't like what you're saying about it. And I don't like the idea of God. That's the high class of atheist. So it still fits within the same framework, which is like, I don't believe there's a God, but then there's a higher seat up, which is what I was calling in this video. I was calling them anti-theists, which I still think is sort of similar to an atheist, but it's more so like, I don't like the idea of your God. I don't like the idea of Christian God. And these are the atheists who you see always posting about the Old Testament and how disgusting. These are the Stephen Frys of the world and the Christopher Hitchenses. This is like, I don't like God. God sucks and I don't like him. And I don't like what I read in the Bible, and I don't like the character, and I don't like the setup, and it doesn't make sense to me, and I think it's stupid. Like that's anti-theism or extreme atheism, whatever you would prefer to call it, true atheism, something along those lines. And so that's what I was trying to differentiate. And I hope that what I'm saying makes sense. So those are the categories that I have in my mind, which is like indifference to God, disbelieving in God, and then being against the belief in God. Those would maybe be the three categories in my mind. I don't know what words you would use. I'm using the word agnostic, atheist, and truly atheist, like something along those lines. Disbelieving in God, against the belief in God. Let's look at a couple of specific comments. Some people commented about just like apologists not being very good at what they do, and I happen to agree with that because I think that most of the time we're not engaging with arguments correctly. Also, another unfortunate thing, which is part of the point that I'm trying to make, is that every time that there's a debate between an agnostic and a Christian, or an atheist and a Christian rather, it is always a debate. It's always a formal debate with a moderator and with intro segments. Maybe I'm wrong, but has anybody ever had their mind changed in watching a debate of that sort? Like, I think you learn things. So I mean, I grew up watching debates like that. I think you learn things, but I cannot imagine you have your mind changed in a debate like that. In my opinion, the only place where you have your mind changed is in earnest conversation, when two people sit down and discuss things with one another. Like, I just don't think that anybody's ever had their mind changed by watching a formal debate. That's my opinion, man, but I truly believe it. So I agree with you. Apologists don't debate well enough, but part of it's because nobody just gets to have a conversation. Like, I would just love so much to have a conversation with an atheist and discuss these things. I want to discuss. I don't want to debate. I don't have to throw points at you. I'm not trying to win. I don't need to win. It's not interesting to me to win. I'm not interested in winning. I want to come off in the most genuine way possible. I genuinely do not want to win. I'm not trying to win. I have nothing to win. I've already won, in my opinion. Like, I just have everything I need, and I want to talk. I love talking and discussing new ideas. And I promise you, I change my mind all the time, and I'm open to new things. I want to talk about concepts like evolution, and I want to talk about ideas of God's personality and what you think about Christian tradition, and like all those things. I want to talk about them. I think there's so much openness, and like I just think that conversations are so much more beneficial than formal debates. So I'm not interested in winning. I've never wanted to win. I don't think debates are winnable because it's just the wrong format. I truly believe that. There was a really interesting point that this one person met where I was critiquing Peterson's approach, and they said, admittedly, Peterson is quite a bad choice as someone who apparently doesn't know what it means for something to be true. As an atheist, I'm convinced that theists are sick. So if reciting the Bible has no effect, what do you think an apologist should do? And this is sort of the crux of what I was trying to say in the Jordan Peterson video that I feel that I could have articulated better, because what I actually believe an apologist should do is, like I'm saying, is have conversations, but also apologists are scared to stand on Jesus Christ. And so my response is, God is met and accessed only through Jesus Christ. So an apologist must introduce Christ, explain the gospel, and make it clear what problem it solves. After this, they then address any objections to this problem or to the reality of Christ to the best of their ability. And then he said this strategy performs poorly, and it's my guess that intellectual apologists purposely avoid the resurrection because you're asking the non-believer to accept supernatural claims on testimony. Worse, once accepted, those claims don't necessarily make internal sense. You're stuck explaining a system whereon one person pays another debt, where the non-believer is likely predisposed to think such debt cannot be paid by another, and moreover, they don't think they're in debt in the first place. This is where I think you are wrong, because I believe that the message of the gospel is that all people are aware deep in their soul that they're in debt. And if you listen to my recent conversation with a missionary who was in Haiti, he talks about this, and it's one of the reasons why he is Calvinist, even though I'm not. But the belief is essentially everybody knows that they're in debt, and when you tell them, they recognize it if they are open-hearted. And so I actually completely disagree with this. I think the approach has to be Christ, because God, when he was just the Old Testament God, was not able to access everyone on earth. And it is only through the sacrifice of Christ that we are now able to access every person on earth. All of the nations are accessed through Christ's blood. And so it's only through Jesus that you can encounter God. So I think it's useful to have conversations about like, what evidence do we have that a God exists? And then you can proceed from there to like, what evidence do we have that Jesus exists? But the natural starting point would actually be, what evidence do we have that Jesus exists? And what did Jesus say about himself? And how does that prove Jesus to be true, a truth teller? And that is more important. And the resurrection of Christ is more important. And so I think when you tell people the nature of the gospel, you spread the gospel itself, people who are open-hearted tend to admit that they are in debt. And then I actually think it is a more important apologetic conversation to convince someone that they are in debt than any of the other points. Like I could get you to believe in Pascal's wager that it would be better for you to be in heaven than in hell. Or I could get you to believe in William Lane Craig's idea of this evidence for theism. Or I could get you to agree in this fine-tuning of the universe appears to suggest that there's a creator. But I still would not have gotten you to salvation. And you would need many more steps from there. Whereas I think it is a more valuable methodology to say to you, I believe in Jesus because I've met him. And if you open your heart to him, you will meet him too. And then I want to take your objections to that. I want to take your objection to Jesus himself, because Jesus is the important part of apologetics. Jesus is the person you need to access and that you need to meet. If you can just get through to Jesus, you will get through to everything else. It's that simple. So if you say, I don't think there's evidence that I'm in debt, and I think if you tell most people that they're in debt, they wouldn't believe you. I so disagree with that. What the problem is that I agree with you if you go to like a rich person and try to convince them that they're in debt, that they won't know that. But if you go to the homeless and the people living on the edges of society and the people in oppressed countries and tell them that they're in debt, they know. They know. And this is the truth of the gospel message. The people of the nations know that they are in debt. They know that they are a sinner in need of salvation. They know that there's nothing they could do that can make them worthy of paradise. They know that they don't deserve it. You should be able to feel that in your soul. I genuinely believe that. If you reject that, then you are prideful. Like I'm sorry to say, and I'd love to have a conversation about it. It's okay to be prideful. I was prideful for a long time. I felt the same way. I know many people who do. It's a human response to be prideful, but God is asking you to set your pride aside and say, like, could it be that I could never be good enough? And if you genuinely ponder that and think about that, I think this is a genuine philosophical idea that philosophers have concluded long before Jesus came along, which is that the human being is simply insufficient, drastically insufficient for anything. And so this idea that you could be good enough to warrant paradise, or that you deserve an infinite God to treat you how you think you deserve to be treated, is just simply untrue. And confronting your own insufficiency is the actual crux on which the gospel stands. It's the recognition that I am so insufficient. It takes all of the burden off of your shoulders and it frees your life. And when you hear people give good Christian testimony, you hear this so often expressed in so many ways, but that is what the real truth is, which is that the burden comes off of you when you realize that there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. All you have to do is lean on relationship and love. And that is what the meaning and the message of the gospel is. So I disagree with you. I think the proper strategy is engaging from the perspective of Jesus Christ. And that's why Jordan Peterson is not qualified to debate atheists, because he doesn't believe in Jesus. And so he's not going to bring anybody to God without being able to bring Jesus along. That's my opinion in the strongest of terms. I feel like for now that sufficiently engages with the majority of the comments on this video. I think this has been really interesting. The response to it to me was really interesting. It was one of the videos that I enjoyed making, because I think it's important to engage with these kind of ideas. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this. I'd be interested in potentially responding to more videos in the future and continuing to do that. For now, I hope that you enjoyed listening to this, and I hope that you would consider sticking around with the channel. Atheist, Christian, whatever background you come from, all are welcome here. This is a journey and a place where I'm sharing my opinions and my thoughts, and I'm not telling you with authority what to believe. I'm interested in engaging the marketplace of ideas and bringing people along on the journey with me as I investigate what is the meaning of life and how we should engage with these things from a Christian mindset. So if that sounds interesting to you, if you want to engage with me, if you want to change my mind, if you want to talk to me, like, comment, subscribe, hit up my form that's in the description and in my YouTube bio. I would love to hear from you. I'd love for you to be a part of the Credence Questions journey. I really appreciate your time. I thank you for watching. This has been Credence Questions, and I hope you have a good one.